So now I am going to model for you a chapter book read aloud. And this is a little bit different than a picture book read aloud because you're engaging with just words on a text and not illustrations as well. But the same principles follow. You know, when you're beginning the book, you can say, what do you think about the cover? What do you notice? What about the back cover? Do you see anything? And you always want to point out, of course, the title and the author. So this is Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate Dicamillo. And of course, share your enthusiasm for starting a new book that you love or continuing the book that you've already started. So I love this book. I love Kate Dicamillo. She's one of my favorite authors. And this book, I think, is just a beautiful story. I'm so excited to share the first chapter with you today. Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate Dicamillo, Chapter 1. My name is India Opal Bologna, and last summer, my daddy, the preacher, sent me to the store for a box of macaroni and cheese, some white rice, and 2 tomatoes, and I came back with a dog. This is what happened. I walked into the produce section of the Winn-Dixie grocery store to pick out my 2 tomatoes, and I almost bumped right into the store manager. He was standing there all red-faced, screaming and waving his arms around. "Who let a dog in here?" He kept on shouting. "Who let a dirty dog in here?" So you can notice, even though there's no illustrations, I'm kind of acting out the scene with my voice and my gestures to bring it to life for campers. At first, I didn't see a dog. There were just a lot of vegetables rolling around on the floor, tomatoes and onions and green peppers, and there was what seemed like a whole army of Winn-Dixie employees running around, waving their arms just the same way the store manager was waving his. And then the dog came running around the corner. He was a big dog and ugly, and he looked like he was having a real good time. His tongue was hanging out, he was wagging his tail. He skidded to a stop and smiled right at me. I had never before in my life seen a dog smile, but that is what he did. He pulled back his lips and showed me all his teeth. Then he wagged his tail so hard that he knocked some oranges off a display, and they went rolling everywhere, mixing in with the tomatoes and onions and green peppers. The manager screamed, "Somebody grab that dog!" The dog went running over to the manager, wagging his tail and smiling. He stood up on his hind legs. You could tell that all he wanted to do was get face to face with the manager and thank him for the good time he was having in the produce department. But somehow he ended up knocking the manager over. And the manager must have been having a bad day because lying there on the floor right in front of everybody, he started to cry. The dog leaned over him, real concern, and licked his face. "Please," said the manager, "somebody call the pound." "Wait a minute," I hollered. "That's my dog. Don't call the pound." And here's a place where you can pause and wonder aloud to model that sort of good, strong reading behavior for your campers. I wonder why she claimed the dog for herself. Let's see what happens. All the Winn-Dixie employees turned around and looked at me, and I knew I had done something big and maybe stupid too. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't let that dog go to the pound. "Here, boy," I said. The dog stopped licking the manager's face and put his ears up in the air and looked at me, like he was trying to remember where he knew me from. "Here, boy," I said again, and then I figured that the dog was probably just like everybody else in the world and he would want to get called by a name. Only I didn't know what his name was, so I just said the first thing that came into my head. I said, "Here, Winn-Dixie," and that dog came trotting over to me just like he'd been doing it his whole life. How cool! It seems like they're almost made for each other. So that's an example of me making another observation about what I'm reading. The manager sat up and gave me a hard stare, like maybe I was making fun of him. "It's his name," I said. "Honest." The manager said, "Don't you know not to bring a dog into a grocery store?" "Yes, sir," I told him. "He got it by mistake. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "Come on, Winn-Dixie," I said to the dog. I started walking and he followed along behind me as I went out of the produce department and down the cereal aisle and past all the cashiers and out the door. Once we were safe outside, I checked him over real careful and he didn't look that good. He was big but skinny. You could see his ribs, and there were bald patches all over him, places where he didn't have any fur at all. Mostly, he looked like a big piece of old brown carpet that had been left out in the rain. Oh, it seems like Winn-Dixie maybe wasn't getting taken care of. "You're a mess," I told him. "I bet you don't belong to anybody." He smiled at me. He did that thing again where he pulled back his lips and showed me his teeth. He smiled so big that it made him sneeze. It was like he was saying, I know I'm a mess. Isn't it funny? It's hard not to immediately fall in love with a dog who has a good sense of humor. Come on, I told him, let's see what the preacher has to say about you. And the two of us, me and Winn-Dixie, started walking home. That's chapter 1. And after the chapters, you'll see in your curriculum that you have questions that you can ask the campers after you've read. So the question for that first chapter was, what have we learned about Opal so far? What words can you use to describe her? And this is where campers can go and look in their books and review and pick out some words, and you can engage them in a discussion and a turn and talk and a share out about your question. So just to review, you always want to share your excitement about the book, use really animated body language and voice when you're reading, and also pause at some points to model that strong reading behavior, like making predictions or making connections, sharing what you feel about what you're reading. And I would recommend that you always read what you're going to read to the campers before they're in front of you, so that you know where you're going to pause, you know what's going to come up next, so you can read really smoothly and make sure that you're keeping all of your campers engaged in the read aloud. So that is the first chapter of Because of Winn-Dixie.